My name is Audrey Watson and I'm living in Birmingham at the moment. I'm 88, coming on for 89 in a few days' time. And as I say, I live in Birmingham. I live in Birmingham. I'm up here for a holiday and to do whatever needs to be. I've got my sister with me and she can talk for herself.
I'm Pat Enevar. Our maiden name was English when we were living in Pembroke Dock. I'm now living in Crewkerne. I was 7 to 8 when war broke out, and I think that's about all for the moment. Oh, I'm 84.
Now, for you both, Pembroke Dock is very special. Tell me about your father's connection and how the family came to Pembroke Dock.
Well, Daddy was an army man, and I'm not quite sure about this, but I think he was just about to retire at the beginning of the war, and he was recalled just a couple of months or so before war broke out. Little did we know he was being sent to France, because these things you weren't told, and you weren't to talk about these sort of things. And I must say, Pembroke Dock was very good, because when it says you must not talk, you must not, I think they mostly adhere to this sort of thing. We certainly did. You had to be very careful, otherwise you don't know what would happen to you. But getting back to Daddy was sent off, we didn't know where to, I think about a couple of months before war broke out, and he said very naughtily to Mummy, when I write to you my first letter, the first word on the letter and the last will be where I am. So in due time she got a letter, my cher Muriel, and at the bottom, I'm as cold as an iceberg. So you didn't have to have brains to see he was in Cherbourg, but that helped us. And after that, it was. You've got something to say?
Well, I was just going to say, we came to Pembroke Dock from Egypt. Daddy had a posting in Egypt for 5 years.
Halcyon years there.
And his posting was to Pembroke Dock. And then war broke out, so there we had to stay and remain. And Daddy, as Audrey was saying, went to France. We had been in army accommodation and we had to get out of that when Daddy left and get private accommodation. So I thought that was just one of the army.
Where did you live first of all?
In a bungalow in Lanyon Barracks,
yes.
Just along Hobbs Point.
Yeah. I think that was bombed, wasn't it?
No.
Lanyon.
Oh, the bungalow I thought you meant. The
Yeah.
bungalow wasn't, that was just
Eventually.
removed. It was just removed.
But from there we had to find, Daddy found us accommodation, and later on we moved to Saundersfoot, a good many years after, to Saundersfoot for 2 years, and travelled to Pembroke Dock Grammar School every day.
Well, what regiment was your father attached to?
RASC.
Royal Army Service Corps. Yeah. He was a major.
He was a major. In the
So you came to Pembroke Dock, and almost immediately he'd gone.
He'd gone, yes.
With the expeditionary force.
Yes,
yeah.
I think he was ready for leaving, but they recalled him. And
Am I
yes,
right in saying? Sorry, am I right in saying that Daddy had a lot to do with stores and provisions going over to France?
RASC is that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That he had a lot to
is
do with that, didn't he?
But obviously you had the German invasion of France and all that. Did he obviously came back? He got
back.
out.
Yes, he came back. The Americans came over to, as you know, we were invaded by Americans. They were very nice, but everybody went around chewing gum after they came. But they came, the headquarters were in Tenby, and Daddy was sent to Tenby to probably organise things or let the Americans know how we lived, or nothing was told to us, we had to. yes, and then most of the American soldiers were stationed in Lannion barracks. So we had an influx of service people, and of course this was added to the Germans. They knew that we had men here, there and everywhere where the camps were, and it made it, we were then given a place in Pembroke Street, so that was right next to the barracks, and we used to hear every night, who goes there, you know, people going into Lannion. You couldn't get into Lannion barracks unless you were a soldier, but they were challenged every night. We used to hear this noise when we were going to bed. Who goes there? Do you remember it?
I do, yes, the sentry box.
Were you in Pembroke Street when the bombing of Pembroke Dock?
Yes. And we watched, I'm jumping from one thing to the other.
No, that's fine.
And we watched the bombing of the tanks, didn't we?
But we were in the
Absolutely.
garden and saw the planes going across the top, and then we could see the bombs drop, but I cannot recall actually seeing the burst of flame and smoke. I cannot honestly bring that to mind. But whether the noise was so loud that I just shot indoors and didn't know what on earth was happening, I can't honestly remember. But I do remember seeing there were 3 planes going along the top, and we got to know the droning of the planes. It was really strange how we learnt.
Am I right in saying, well, we watched a little bit of excitement, but we watched, and the flames at the very beginning shot up, so they say, 1,000 feet into the air. Now I'm no good at 1,000 feet or 10 yards, I have no idea, they're all the same to me. But I imagine that is quite high. But that was quite something, that was the most terrible thing, I think, that happened to Pembroke Dock.
When the wind blew the smoke up in our
appalling.
Pembroke Street way,
And we had to.
It was really, the air was so thick. So everybody had a share of that, whichever way.
So,
as I say, the wind was blowing.
I was going to say about the water. We were all told to have buckets of water all over the house, so the droplets could fall into the water, which was a bit of a help. Because
droplets of
oil.
If the smoke and fumes sort of blew up our way and got into the house, then that's what we were advised to do, to help sort of
what
clear
with doors shut
the air.
and windows closed, it was but again, as children, we were put out with things like this, but it was all exciting. I don't mean it in a very bad way, but it was a terrible thing, the war. It was a terrible thing. But we, being young, I suppose, we quite enjoyed it. But the thing we rather liked was the fact that going to school, we had to go to school as arranged every day, unless the siren went, and of course we went into our shelters or in the basement. Mostly these big streets in PD. Their basement was their shelter. But if we were safe in going to school, mind you, we also had to carry a gas mask. Now, if we were without it, it was serious trouble, really serious trouble.
Just never without it.
Never without it.
And what do you have to carry?
It was in a box,
little square
round
box
here,
round our necks.
and carried round,
That's
so
very
we
neat.
couldn't move without
And
this
did you-
wretched box.
In school, did you just keep it by your desk?
Oh yes,
all the
kept it
time.
outside,
All the
so that
time.
if the siren went, you just picked it up and
Mind
off
you,
you went.
we had practice when they first came out. We had practice with the gas masks, and I tell you, I had asthma as a child, and you can tell trying to breathe, and I used to pray hard every day when the sirens went that nobody would drop a bomb whereby we were forced to use these gas masks.
Yes. When there were, do you remember when there was a threat of gas attacks? Then they came round to the schools. I think it happened in school. I'm sure it did, with an extra little filter, and I remember it with green tape to stick on an extension, just in case we had a gas attack.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
All fun. That was interesting.
I'm sorry to say.
And can you remember the time? I think it was supposed to have been the first bomb that dropped in Pembrokeshire, and it dropped in the
Yes.
Pleddau,
Oh, this is so funny.
just short of Pembroke Ferry, and all the fish.
Thousands of fish were blown up on the...
Everybody was scrabbling to
All
get
had breakfast and dinner. We didn't actually. We didn't.
No, but we heard
yes,
about
it
it.
is.
And,
Yeah, that was a fun side.
that was supposed to have been the first bomb that dropped, and he just sort of... Apparently, they said he was actually a poor shot because he could have had the tanks, or I think a ferry boat had just docked in time, and otherwise they would have hit them, but I don't know.
Ladies, can I ask where was the school?
Pardon?
Where was the school?
The school, I was in Lannion at the beginning of the...
By the park.
war.
Do you know Pembroke Dock?
Yes.
Yes.
By the park.
I am.
Yes.
Oh, yes, the old Coronation School.
Yeah.
Opposite Tesco's as now is just
It's all changed.
diagonally
hasn't it?
opposite there, yes.
Yes.
I think it's administrative building or something like that, I'm not sure.
You went to the school along the road in Pembroke Dock,
Lannion School.
Lannion School, till you joined us at the grammar school.
That's right. Yes.
Yes.
But, and the night of the Blitz, that's when the landmine landed on the Pier Hotel. That was the
Oh,
night
at the bottom of the
Audrey and I
road.
were sharing a double bed in the
To help
front
each
bedroom,
other.
and the head of the bed was directly under the window, and there was the wall section and the window section. Audrey happily was under the wall part. I was under the window section, and to this day I don't know how I got under the bed.
I
But
do.
Audrey woke up after with the crash, and all she could feel was glass in the window frame where I had been lying. And
I
she said,
do.
"Where am I?"
Self-preservation.
Yes. And
She didn't ask me to come and join her under the bed. I was by the window watching what was happening. She was under the bed.
I got under the bed, but to this day I
Mind you, I
do
thought
not
if you'd
know
gone,
how.
so
So there's glass all over the bed where you...
Oh yes,
Yes,
the
on the
window frame
windows.
came in.
Yeah.
The window frame
Yeah.
came in.
Yes.
And that was the top house. That was the top house in Pembroke Street from the...
But all our windows
landmine.
were taped.
Yes, we had
All
to
the
put
glass was
crisscross
taped.
tape
Crisscross tape.
to
But
stop.
never, so they fell in lump. The glass fell in lumps. But I don't think we were hurt at all.
Oh no.
Except I wasn't happy with you.
I can never
Self-preservation.
remember feeling fear.
No.
I have no memory of fear. Maybe I must have been at some time, but I have no memory of it. It was excitement. It
Mind
really
you,
was.
when we were in the shelter one night and the bombs were dropping one by one and going off, we were all in darkness and Daddy had joined us, and he lit a cigarette with a, you wouldn't do it today, with a
Cigarette
lighter. We all screamed. We thought it was a bomb had come for us. Because that's what happened.
We were told there'd be a whine and a flash, and we saw the flash of that cigarette lighter.
That's just one of these things. That's about one of the only times. But we got to know.
Where were you sheltering then? Were you in the basement?
In the basement.
You were in the basement of your house?
Yes.
Yes, we were in our own
yes,
basement,
yes.
and then later on we joined forces with another family, and they
Used their
literally
shelter.
made a hole in the wall of the basement so that people could go through and escape the route, which I think was a wonderful idea, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
But I think we all got to know the siren would go, and we knew the Germans were almost over us and coming, and then we'd hear the wailing of the plane, and then a silence, and we knew it was coming. It's coming, and then we'd hear the bomb coming down. The air coming through, and then an almighty crash. But we all got to know it, so it was a case of counting how many, this sort of thing.
We were told, rightly or wrongly, if you hear the whining, you know it's going past you, so
Yes.
don't be frightened. It's when you don't hear anything, you have to worry. I seem to remember
And
that.
how many were you? You were a large family.
Yes.
How many were you in
Four
the basement?
Girls.
Um,
4 girls. Raymond was in the army, so he wasn't regularly in the basement with
yes,
us. Only,
Raymond Audrey more impact, 4 of us.
only on leave.
Yes, 4 of us.
Um,
But you see, it
Mummy
was
was-
strictly. We knew what to do. You went in the basement, you took your seat, and you sat there. It was a case of you don't get up and run around and this sort of thing. You're there, so you're listening to what's going on, which probably isn't a good thing. But we were. What would
Mummy
you
was
say?
well organised. She was a good
Very,
military wife,
yes,
wasn't
yes,
she?
yeah.
And she was calm, and she was really a good organiser. And I think
I think most
she
of
did a grand
Pembroke Dock
job.
were like this. But in May of 1940, was it whatever, we had the worst raid ever. And in fact, reading something a while ago, it said there wasn't one house in Pembroke Dock that wasn't affected.
That was the night that we had the window blown in.
Every house, windows blown out, houses blown up, you know. And that's a lot to say.
I don't know how many landmines landed on Pembroke Dock then, but I know there was
One that came down on the Pier Hotel.
That was the one
But,
that affected us, but there
you-
were more.
That was at the
apparently.
And your
bottom.
brother did a heroic rescue, didn't he? He helped to.
A very matter-of-fact person, very
Yes,
sensible,
right.
Raymond.
Raymond, oh, he was
Yes, and he'd be
funny.
the first to go. He wouldn't stop to think.
He was on leave, and we didn't find out till he was ready to go back to Scotland that it was medical leave. What do they call
Sick
it?
leave.
Sick leave.
Hmm.
Because when he came to us, his hands were like this, all chilblains, his hands and his feet. They'd been out on the moors in
Manoeuvres and
Scotland,
things. Mm.
living there for a fortnight.
It
So
was
cold.
Close to
He
frostbite.
wouldn't tell you
know.
this. He's such a funny boy. He was so brave. And so he came home, he told Mummy he'd got leave, which was good. We thought funny, but okay. And so he was with us the night of this terrible raid. And before we knew where we were, he was out of the shelter, and he didn't come back for hours. And then he came back all black, and you know. And he never talks about these things. We piece them together, but he knows.
He was a good organiser, wasn't
Yes,
he?
he was very good.
Had a good head on his shoulders, a very sensible young
And
man.
he helped dig out the lady from. He helped dig out the lady from
Oh yeah, Mrs.
Yes.
Lemon.
Mrs.
Yes.
Lemon.
Oh,
Yes.
he helped dig her out.
Yes. Apparently she was found
And
under the
organised
table,
the
good strong
ambulance.
table.
Of course, the ambulance must have been so busy that night. So busy. But the people at Pembroke Dock, I think, were great. Such a little place. And when we came from, we've said, from Egypt, where we as children, they were halcyon days for us. And then we came to Pembroke Dock. We came to Penna.
Oh yes, Penna first, that's
Penna
right.
Barracks, yes.
Yes, that's good.
And we were there for about 12 months before we got to Pembroke Dock, and then the grammar school and all the rest of it. But Pembroke Dock, you know, they were very good. And the following morning after a raid, you go into town for something, had to get something or other. And the whole place smelled of gas, and the whole town smelled of
The
gas.
rubble.
Smelled of
Earthy
rubble. And yeah.
You
But
don't
you-
forget things like that, you know.
But they don't
the sight
last.
of that.
They don't
Well,
last.
it doesn't. You just get on with it, don't you? As everyone has to.
And there are always two sides to this. And mostly, we had a fun side, or rather,
Mummy had a good sense of humour,
But,
always kept things light, and she, you know,
Yes,
she wasn't
yes.
a nervy, worried person. She was very well organised.
Then we come on to
Personally.
rations. We were ration. Now, a lot of people have said, much younger than we are, oh, it was terrible, they were hungry and this rubbish. I'm sorry, but rubbish. Mummy was a very good organiser. She'd make a piece of meat this size end up like this. So she was wonderful. We had excellent meals, and we'd make things like vegetable soup. People used to grow their own vegetables or keep chickens, and you could buy it from them. This wasn't black market. I mean, everybody knew that they were keeping chickens. You were allowed to do that. and then you'd have your rations, a meagre piece of butter,
About 2 inches square maximum. I
wee
think.
little bit.
That would be your,
So we-
your weekly ration.
Mixed it with the margarine, which was ghastly.
It was that castor oil.
That-
margarine.
yes.
It was dreadful.
But that was pretty bad. But the meat, you'd probably have a sausage each. I don't know whether that was once a week or what. But we had to have a sausage. And 1 egg a week. And it was a case of, what should we do with your egg today? Do you want it poached, boiled, or whatever?
But we did have dried egg.
Oh, that was ghastly, the dried
And the
egg.
scrambled eggs made with dried egg was like shoe leather.
But you know, with all of this, Mummy
She's a very good
found,
cook.
found time to make sure there was old people that she knew of, because she was very popular in the town. And we would give up our egg for a cake. No egg this week, because Mummy is going to bake for Mrs. So-and-so or so-and-so. But she was excellent. Mummy was very good in doing this.
And also, do you remember when we got in touch with Daddy's Colonel, and when whoever was in town, whether it was the British servicemen, American servicemen, Canadians, and she was a wonderful classical pianist, wasn't she?
Yes.
And she would entertain them, and she'd make scones and things, and they'd come and they'd sit in her lounge, and we'd have to serve them and help, you know, take the cakes round and things like that. So she was very good.
One of the most pathetic times, though, very, very busy but very sad, was the evacuation of Dunkirk. We had loads and loads, hundreds of lorries coming up the hill with wounded people, soldiers who'd not had their socks off for 3 weeks or so, or 6 weeks.
Literally.
And we were asked over the local radio, if you can do anything to help, please tear up your sheets for bandages. I think we were allowed a sheet each to last. Wash it, dry it, and put it back on the bed again. So our sheets were torn up and things like this. Mummy had from the barracks, the soldiers coming in all times of the day. She was giving them tea, something to eat. And in fact, two of them almost dropped when they came through the door. They were so tired. They'd come from this Dunkirk evacuation, and she gave them beds. So we were lucky if we had a bed sometime. But Mummy was, being an army family, you know, you've got this feeling for the soldiers. But that was one of the saddest times. We really came.
You have a very special memory of the Luftwaffe as well, don't you?
Of the
German Air Force.
Oh, the German
You
Air
saw it
Force.
very closely, and the attack it made, the aircraft made.
When
That's
after the bombing of the tanks,
Oh,
that one that came up to Merck Street, you and Maureen saw them, didn't you? Because you could see the pilot in the plane.
Oh yes, I mentioned that a while ago. Yes, that is true. That is true. But I was mentioning somebody called Lord Haw, William Joyce. Have you heard of him? But Janet was saying that trivial. I wouldn't even bother to mention it. But what I'm going to say is, he would broadcast quite frequently to Pembroke Dock, and he'd say, "I know you're there, Pembroke Dock, and I'm coming back." Well, for 5 minutes, that took the use out of your legs. But when you got used to the fact that you're going to be bombed, because he lived in London Road.
Well, we understood that he lived there.
With
we
a
don't
Mrs.
know
with a
100% for sure.
Well, it must be with a Mrs. Jones, and she said he was a perfect gentleman. I think she had him for 12 months, and unbeknown to us, he was looking to see what there was. We had a load of servicemen from all over staying there in camps. And what else did we have?
Well, because Pembroke Dock is a garrison town, isn't it?
And we've got, yes,
2 army barracks,
Okay.
Air Force Base, Sunderland Flying Base.
yes, that's right. And so there's a lot for them to, there's a lot of them, there's a lot of things for the Germans to,
Yeah, tell them go out.
they had a lot of meat, as I say, in staying there. But going back to rations, bacon, what was it? Meat, eggs, bacon,
Almost
tea.
everything.
But yes.
Almost everything, wasn't it? But it was a dig for victory, grow your own, and everybody really
But it was
worked
good.
hard at that.
You didn't see very many big tummies and whatnot. Wasn't very healthy. And going back to school again, yes, we enjoyed it there because we sometimes prayed for the in exams, prayed for the alarm to go, which it did. Then we belted off to the church, and fun and games. So it wasn't all.
Did you go in the basement of a church? Did you,
I'm sorry.
when you were in school and the alarm went off?
Yes.
Where did you go then for shelter?
Where did we go? Oh, we had both chemistry labs in the grammar school were allocated. We all had our places to go.
And do you remember going across to the church? We had to go to the
Yes, I
to the
mentioned that.
church.
Yes, across the road to the church, and we went down in the
basement, the crypt.
and we had lessons down there as well.
Which church was that?
I forget
What
what it was
it?
called.
It wasn't our church,
in
but
Bush Street.
it was somewhere which had
It was
a
in
safe
Bush Street. I
area.
can't remember the name of it. Not St John's. It was.
Maybe St Andrews,
It was.
wasn't it?
St Andrews. Did you say?
Maybe St Andrews?
In
That would be
Argyle
it.
Street.
That would be
Was it
it.
Argyle Street?
I knew.
No, it wasn't Argyle
No,
Street.
Bush Street.
Bush Street.
St Andrews.
In Bush Street.
Just.
What's that? Yeah.
They've got an underground
Yes,
yes.
schoolroom, is it? This way?
Yes.
It would be. Yes, it would
Yes,
be. That.
yes.
But,
Just
Coming back to the loft, you saw the pilot, you say? didn't you?
now, yes, as the years roll on, I can see him plainer and plainer. That is rubbish. The fact is, we did see his face, scared us silly. He was quite low over the road, quite low, and we could see him. Could see we thought we could see the bullets all up the road. Now those marks of the bullets were. How long have I been dead? 13 years. 20 years ago, you could still see them. But I think by now, if the road's been done and what have you, it's covered over. But they were heading for the Americans who came into the war late in you know, it was nice of them anyway. But there's a lot of what I would call meat for the Germans to get at in Pembroke Dock, surprisingly. But yes.
As an army family, was there much involvement with Lanyon Barracks? I mean, it was wartime, but how was the army families sort of link up, etc.? Were they closely associated? You know,
Well,
different
no.
families, or were you more like you were part of the civilian population?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, because there wasn't much room to have. In fact, they did have army houses in
There were not many though, were there? Not many.
no, they did have some army houses, but they were being a small town. It was slightly different, and then having I've forgotten what was the name of that a camp on the hill going up.
Defensible.
Defensible.
Defensible
You
barracks.
see, that was a big barracks to take in army families. But I don't think it was a long stay army family as the norm. So after Daddy went abroad, we were then transferred from the barracks, and it was totally taken over by soldiers, what have you, foreign mostly. I think even the Americans were about the last to leave Pembroke Dock.
Our bungalow, I remember, it was within the road to Hobbs Point, was with the wall. This very big. I think it's still there, isn't it? Most of it. They've taken little bits out here and there, but we were just within the Lanyon Barracks.